Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome to another edition of Football Theory. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis, of course, joined by one of my favorites, the coach, Coach Bob Shipley, former high school coach at Burnet, Capel, Brownwood, Rotan, Belton, also played college football at Abilene Christian. Coached there as well in multiple stints on multiple staff at the University of Texas as well. Coach Bob Shipley. What's going on, Coach? How you doing?
Hey, doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Coach. Doing good, man. Always excited to talk some ball with you, learn something from you as I do every week. We're going to continue to talk, kind of look at the micro and the macro of Texas transition to the SEC. Really looking at the overarching theme of, will Sark have to adjust to the SEC, or will the SEC have to adjust to Sark? And we're hoping it's the latter. So we'll look at a lot of different concepts and trends, different, offensive like patterns in the SEC, conceptual signatures, and see which one of those that Sark may be ahead of the curve on, and then maybe Sark may be a little bit behind on. So we'll get into that here coming up here on the show. Before we get started, though, we have to thank our fantastic sponsor. We're very grateful to have Laura Baker as a part of the On Texas Football family. Football Theory is brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So please give her a shout today at 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Or you can visit them. You can email them as well, Laura at AndyAllenTeam.com. Thank you very much to Laura Baker. We really appreciate all of her support. All right, Coach, let's get right to it. Now, last week, because Nick Saban was at SEC Media Days and gave us some great insight as to why he, as a defensive mind, hates going up against Sark. He talked about the squeeze splits, the condensed sets, the compressed sets, reduced splits. There are a lot of different ways that they refer to. But Sark, that's one of the conceptual signatures of Sark's offense. And we talked about how a lot of guys in the NFL, when that Shanahan tree also, they adopt the philosophy of having those squeeze splits, those condensed formations. And I started looking at other conceptual signatures, things that set Sark's offense apart. They really, what are the if you start looking at overall the different concepts that Sark likes to kind of pile on into his offense, which one of those are probably the most prevalent and the most relevant? And that's what I looked at and tried to see how those translate to the SEC. But getting back to the conversation last week, you brought up a good point. And we were talking about, I don't know if we mentioned it in Football Theory, we were talking about how the Nick Saban quote saying, I kind of always hated playing against Sark because of these, what he calls the squeeze splits, which we just broke down. You talked about pressure packages before we move on to some other conceptual signatures for Sark. And it's interesting you brought that up, and I don't think we talked about it, but when you have those condensed, compressed sets, how does that work? Who does it benefit? Who's that more advantageous to in terms of applying pressure and being able to block the pressure when everything is that close together?
Yeah, well, there's always a plus and a minus to any scheme you come up with. If there wasn't any minuses, then everybody'd run the same scheme because you couldn't stop it. But the condensed sets, we always call it. I never liked it that much. I never had, or not that often did I have receiver fast enough to get some separation. So all I was doing is bringing more people in the box to have to block. But one of the things that we talked about briefly, just in case we have some people watching that didn't watch last Thursday's show. Actually, I don't even think it was Thursday. I think maybe it was Friday. But anyway, last week's show, we're not live, so you can pull it up. But anyway, we talked about the advantages of, first of all, rub routes and things like that, but also, causing the defense, whoever has the wide side of the field, when the ball snaps, they've got to start retreating at an angle because that's a lot of grass out there to cover. And so it gives your receivers angle advantages on quick routes to try to get the DB's momentum the opposite direction of the way you're going to go. So those are a few things we talked about. But one of the things I think, Rod, is after the show was over, you and I were talking, and one of the things that that I didn't bring up live was the fact that, you know, this, although people didn't run that many condensed sets.
It's a newer, it's something that's
Yeah.
pretty much kind of a newer fad.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Well, so the way that can present problems for the offense is really pretty easy when you look at it, you know, especially on film. It puts a lot of guys close to the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
You know, it puts 11 guys within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, or maybe even 8 in some cases, depending on where you are in the field. And so it gives the defense lots of opportunities to get pressure on the quarterback without giving it away. Mm-hmm. A lot of times when you have the field spread out with receivers, what the quarterback and the backs and the coaches are looking for is somebody sneaking over the top of a guy that's going to be blitzing. That's one of the telltale signs that a blitz is coming, because obviously when you think about it, you can't blitz a guy. You have to have somebody to cover for the blitzer.
Exactly.
And so to do that, he's either got to be close enough to sprint when the ball snapped over, or he's got to be cheated over the top, one or the other. Mm-hmm. And so when you have this condensed set, you've got a lot more people close to the line of scrimmage than you normally do. So it comes fast. And so having a good plan of protection is critical, of course. And it could be that you have a back that's checking before they release or something like that, maybe even a tight end. But anyway, if you have a tight end, you don't even have to have a tight end. You could still have a condensed set. But defensively, would you have been more comfortable with these condensed sets, especially? Of course, you probably. How many times did you blitz?
As a nickelback, I blitzed quite a bit in Bull Reese's he Texas. He called Bull Reese. I think that's how he got the nickname. Bull Reese was very aggressive defensively. So as a nickel, I blitzed a lot. But once I became a corner, I don't think I blitzed one time in my career from the cornerback position. It was very, very rare that we had pressures with the corners in it. Sometimes maybe the safety, but most of the time it was the nickel back. But Coach, I just thought it was so interesting when you brought it up, because you are right. We talked about the advantages, right? Of, it creates better leverage opportunities for the offense, because the defense has got to defend that space. They can't be aggressive because you're going to get rubbed or picked, because everything is confined in there. So you can get your receivers a free release. They also have access to the opposite side of the field because they're condensed, so they can get to that opposite hash, that opposite number. So that's more of a route tree that we have to defend. Nick Saban said it messes up his pattern match coverages, because the pattern match coverages are based on when routes declare themselves, and that guy's running all the way across opposite side of the field. Well, I can tell you right now that makes it tough on route declaration when you're trying to pattern match in coverage. So he brought up a lot of reasons why it's advantageous to the offense, but what you brought up is a reason I think it's advantageous to the defense. Because of disguise, it actually makes disguise a lot easier on the defense, because you can get to your work. You're right there next to your work. When you spread out, damn, now I got to actually make sure that my disguise, I don't forsake my responsibility for disguise. I got to get to my responsibility. Now, if I got to be there guarding the tight end when that nickel blitzes, I got to get over there, and that quarterback's going to see me, and he's going to say, that's interesting. He's going to look at the nickel and go, okay, that nickel's coming. That's why he's over the top, and he's going to be able to put it together. And the reason it intrigued me when you brought it up, because we talked about the connection to the Shanahan coaching tree. And that's when Sark, he hybridized a lot of his ideas with Shanahan. And that's why he loves the condensed and compressed sets, which, by the way, he runs probably, as much as any team in major college football. And we know, because of Saban's comments, that it's not something that is very common in the SEC. As a matter of fact, I did some research, and turns out your tight bunch usage in the SEC is actually declining. All right, it's actually been declining over the years. So this is actually a trend that Sark can come into the SEC and actually be a trend setter and do something as much, if not more, than anybody else in the SEC. I think Lane Kiffin's doing live, and you may get some of that. But for the most part, I think Sark would be a trend setter here. But getting back to the Shanahan coaching tree in the Super Bowl, and this is, I think, something you'll appreciate, Coach. In the Super Bowl, Shanahan runs more condensed, compressed sets. If you look at average formation width, nobody has a tighter formation width than the 49ers. In 19.7 yards is their average formation width. That's the tightest in the NFL, followed by the Rams, the Dolphins, the Texans. You get it, right? It's the Shanahan coaching tree. It's one of their conceptual signatures. In the Super Bowl, Spagnuolo, who might be the best DC in all of the NFL, he took advantage of it in just the way you're talking about. And I was at that Super Bowl, and I remember watching, thinking to myself, that is a brilliant game plan by Spags. The Chiefs defense generated a season high 9 unblocked pressures in the Super Bowl against the 49ers. 49ers run a lot of condensed, a lot of compressed sets, a lot of reduced squeeze splits. And the Chiefs were taking advantage of it by basically putting pressure from the second and even the third level, running dime defense at times, putting pressure from the second, third level. And the reason they could do it is because, like you said, Coach, they didn't really have to worry about disguise. I mean, you're really close to your work there. And the quarterback probably really wouldn't know where the pressure was coming from, considering everything is so confined. The Chiefs blitzed on 27 of their snaps. They played man behind it on 23 of them. So they took some chances, but I think they were basically they were aligned with your philosophy, Coach, that, hey, if you're gonna put us all in here jam-packed like that, hey man, we're gonna come after you. Because we don't have to worry about disguise anymore. You just made our life a little bit easier from a pressure package perspective. Now, so Sark's going to run a lot of this, which he is. That may be the side he's got to look at in the SEC if he's going up against a really tactician on the defensive side as a coordinator.
And it's much easier defensively on the defense to force when you got more coming offensively, when you have more defenders coming than you can block or that you can get to, then you've got to throw to your safety valve. You got to get rid of it quick. Well, and if it's a normally spaced offense, what's the typical route on a blitz?
Quick game.
It's a quick in. Well, when you're condensed, you don't have a quick in. I mean, you're going to throw it in traffic if you do. So you got to run a quick out. Now that gives a DB more time and more room to break on the ball and react than he does when it's a quick in. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's just another scenario that's going to. But I think the reason that Sark will be more successful with this in the SEC than what the SEC has seen, as you mentioned, teams are running less of it.
They are.
It's his. It's his game plan that makes it different. It's his schemes that make it different. You can get in condensed and you can get in bunch packages, but if you don't know how to really take advantage of what the defense is doing, if you can't use that to your advantage, then you either have to stop doing it, which a lot of them have, or you got to do a little more research and find ways to compress the formation in a way that it is difficult for the defense to defend. And I think that's what Sark does. That's what he'll try to look at everybody and see how they do respond to that. So he'll have an answer for it offensively. And I would think most of them will be successful. They have been in the past. It's been successful. And it's something, as you said, Nick Saban's fearful of it. And if the man's fearful of it, then it's something you got that people need to be ready for.
Another conceptual signature that Texas will go into the SEC, I believe, as a trend setter with is play action pass and RPO passes. Based on Pro Football Focus numbers, Quinn's 54.6% play action pass rate. I do believe sometimes Pro Football Focus throws in RPO passes. I think they just kind of count RPOs as play action passes when actually we know they are different. So I think that if you want to, I think the usage would be RPO and play action pass usage, but this is Pro Football Focus numbers. So I think ultimately, and I look based on that, the only quarterback in the SEC that will come close to the play action pass rate of Quinn Ewers will be Jackson Dart of Ole Miss. He was around 46%. Now, Dylan Gabriel was over 50% too, but Dylan Gabriel will be at Oregon. So maybe Oklahoma's offense, whoever is there, they'll have a high play action pass rate, but still not going to be higher than Quinn Ewers. Quinn, top 10 Pro Football Focus grade in play action pass and RPO throws. He actually according to Pro Football Focus, led the Power 5 in play action pass dropbacks. So whoever is leading the SEC in play action pass, they will no longer be the leader. When Sark gets there, nobody's going to use more play action pass as a cheat code or a force multiplier than Sark. And that's something that I love about Sark's offense too. It's a deception-based passing game. he's always going to put something in there as a cheat code or a force multiplier to help his quarterback. So I would say if you combine RPO usage, RPO passes, and play action pass, that Sark would be among the leaders, if not the leader in the SEC in those two categories. And I think that's something that Sark should continue to strive for. That kind of also, I think, one of the conceptual signals. You're looking at the highest rates of play action pass in the country. You definitely can call that a conceptual signature of Sark. And the SEC will be trying to adapt to how much Sark does it, because nobody in the SEC has that much RPO play action pass game together.
Yeah, it's something as a defensive coordinator keeps you up all night. Looking at all the different ways Sark's going to attack you, all the different looks he's going to give you, all the different motions, all the different shifts, all the different, the ball, as you said, more times than not, looks like the ball is going into a running back's belly. I mean, whether it is or not, whether it's going to be play action or an RPO or whatever, you've got to have it all covered, and it'll give you gray hair as a defensive coordinator. Really.
No, you're right, because he's constantly got you defending both. The RPO is always defending both the run pass option, but even early downs, play action pass, he wants you constantly, when it's second half, third quarter, fourth quarter, thinking about both the play action pass and the run game, traditional run game. So I think he wants to just keep you guessing and stay as unpredictable as he can. And I think he does a really good job of that. So that's something to keep in mind. These are conceptual signatures from Sark, things that I think set his offense apart. And I think the other thing, if you want to look at three kind of vital signs of the Sark offense, there is no more important vital sign for the Sark offense, a conceptual signature, than pre-snap motion. His rates are probably closer to 55% pre-snap motions and shifts. From my research, and shout out to StatCat, got this from them. SEC pre-snap motion rates, excluding running back flares, around 34%. Sark is around 55%. So he's way ahead of the curve there. If you go look at it, 60% of the passes from pre-snap motion. So that is 60% pass rate with pre-snap motion in the SEC. But with motion at the snap, by the way, which is different. Pre-snap motion is prior to the snap. There is also at the snap motion when somebody is going in motion while the ball is snapped. So those are two different things. And if you go look at the snap motion in the SEC, there's about a 46% pass rate on at the snap motion. Quinn Ewers, how about this? 39% of Quinn Ewers' pass attempts last year came with pre-snap motion. So you're talking about close to 40%. 55% of all the plays had pre-snap motion. 22% of his pass attempts were with motion at the snap. So, that's his motion at the snap numbers, by the way, are close to double that of the SEC average. So they're above way above the average and the mean when it comes to pre-snap motion rates. They're ahead of the curve there. They're also ahead of the trend when it comes to motion at the snap rates as well in the SEC. And this might be the most important critical core conceptual signature for Sark is motion. I was listening to an interview from Mike Zimmer, who's the new defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, and they asked him what idea on offense, what new trend, what new concept gives you the most trouble. And he, without hesitation, coach said pre-snap motion. He said pre-snap motion. He said it displaces the numbers differently, changes strengths of the offense. We got to change our rules on defense based on the pre-snap motion. Sometimes now they're using motion just to add to the run game, to give guys leverage and added extra blocker in the run game. He said it just makes our life hell. And I think that's why Sark does it so much. And I would argue he should do it more. And I've said this before. You go look at the best offenses in the NFL, and they're all using pre-snap motion at a much higher rate. Dolphins are at 82%. The Rams are at 70%. 49ers are at 75%. Detroit's at 62%. Kansas City is at 64%. So is Green Bay. You could argue Sark should use it even more because it works, Coach. It works.
Yeah, it does. And hang on to all those stats. And after the next season, after the 24 season, and then maybe even more interestingly, after the 25 season, college football or football in general is a copycat game. And I think we're going to see a trend in the SEC that's going to follow what Sark does with his pre-snap motions or at the snap motions, shifting and all that stuff. We're going to see more and more, I think, because it worked. The way we went into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama last year, the success that we've had, I think we'll see more and more SEC teams running these schemes because it's just really hard to defend. The compressed sets, the whole package. You're going to see people stealing a little this and that if they can make it fit with their system, and it's going to make the league better.
There's no doubt, because when you think about it, we're talking about individually how these concepts are tough to defend and a headache to defend. Sark combines like 4 of them on one play. He got a condense and compress set using play action or RPOs on that play as well. And in addition to that, he'll have pre-snap motion working like that. That to me, those are the 3 key conceptual signatures from Sark, and we'll get into some more stuff obviously next week. But in all of these areas, he's ahead of the SEC averages, and I think the SEC will be adjusting to Sark when it comes to these specific areas. And just real quick before we get out of here, I always like to throw these numbers out because it just shows you how effective motion is. When Sark's quarterbacks target a player in motion prior to the snap or at the time of the snap, completion percentage 81%. This is the last 3 years since Sark has been on campus. 81%, 81%, 78%. Yards per attempt 10, 8.4, 10.2. I mean, you're gonna look at explosive play rate. We're at close to 25% explosive play rate, 23% explosive play rate. It works, Coach. It works. 60% of the time, it works every time. So there you go. Some more.
My daughter heard me talk to my boys one time, and I said, "Man, we score every time we run that play." My daughter said, "Well, run it every time, Daddy. Just run it every time."
What's so hard? What's so hard?
I could be a coach. It's easy.
What's my dad doing? Why is he making it harder? Work smarter, not harder, Dad. That's what football theory is all about. All right, let's thank Laura Baker before we get out of here. Once again, we got to thank our fantastic sponsor, Laura Baker. Really happy to have her as a part of the On Texas Football family. Football Theory brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Her and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So please give her a shout today. She can handle any of your real estate concerns or needs. 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Thank you very much to Laura Baker for all of her support in sponsoring the Football Theory. Thank you, Coach, for all of the knowledge. We appreciate it every time, man. I leave here a smarter and wiser football theorist because of you. Thank you very much to Laura Baker as well for all of her support. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. He's the real MVP. And most importantly, thank you to all of you guys for listening and for watching. And until next time, hook 'em horns.